shine in the night like a diamond you are. I'm good on the side, it's alright, just hold me in the dark. No one's got to know what we do, hit me up when you hold.
Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in today. What I'm going to do is a Q&A answering the questions that you guys sent into my Instagram via the questions I put up like a few weeks ago. And as part of that, I'm talking about volume food. So what I'm going to do is compare heaps of different foods in terms of your carbs, proteins, and fats. Talk about how many calories each of them has and their macronutrient breakdown. So when you kind of get in the depths of your cut and you start getting really hungry, this is when you swap out your big foods that take up a lot of your calories and macros and start getting clever and using food that kind of lasts longer. So I'm very excited for that. I'm currently in Melbourne. Last time I filmed in this lounge room in this space at my sister's house, it was bikini haul and I got like 2.5 million views to this date. So that's pretty crazy. So let's try and do that again. Something tells me a lot of people won't be watching this one compared to that one because I'm not half naked. Gonna move on from that. Question 1, foods to avoid. Never will you ever see me taking out entire food groups, as in I will never completely remove fats, proteins, or carbs from my diet. We need all of these for health. Things like processed sugars that have been reduced and put together, we don't need those. So when I'm doing this cut, I choose foods that make me physically feel good, that are good for my digestion, that don't react with me and my digestion. Removal of sugars and processed things, gluten, dairy, they're things that react with me. If you are fine eating those things, you can keep eating those things as long as you are still in your caloric deficit. There's a lot of different opinions about the difference between flexible dieting and if it fits your macros and whole foods. So people think that eating clean and eating whole foods, that will make you lose fat. What will make you lose fat is ensuring you are eating in a caloric deficit. So that's why people do flexible dieting where they say, I still eat a burger because I can fit that into my calories and macros and still be in a deficit. That's great, you can do that. But I would love to know how you feel physically doing that. I know for me, if I eat that kind of food, I will get bloating, I will get diarrhea, I will get poor sleep. That will then affect my training. If my training performance goes down, then that is going to affect my rate of fat loss. So my deficit will then be smaller because I'm not going to be smashing out my gym sessions. My sleep's going to be shit, going to be inflamed. I'm going to be responding and reacting to this food. And you're probably not going to see as good results on me physically. I won't be as defined because I'll be watery. That can kind of mess with your head. So when you're cutting, I really think that whole foods is the best way to do it just because you feel great. You can also allow for the foods that you love. I still allow for pieces of chocolate every now and again in my diet if I'm really craving it. To avoid any foods that react with you and respond with you, don't take out whole food groups, basically. Question 2, self-control and cravings when you're on a diet. All right, I feel like this is a whole other topic in itself that I want to cover in another YouTube. I don't know if you guys look at me and think you never binge eat or you never eat sweet food. Like when you're cutting, you stick to your diet and plan 100%. I would love to be that person. Last week, I bought a block of chocolate because I wanted to have 2 pieces of Lindt chocolate in my diet, which I allowed for. Had the 2 pieces, was sweet, went to bed. The next day, I was like emotionally triggered by something. I ate the whole block. I went beyond my calories. I didn't even track it. I'd hit my calories for that day, and then I ate 6 squares, which is the rest of the block of the chocolate. I am not a machine. I am a human. We do those things sometimes. What is important is how we pick ourselves up afterwards. Self-control and giving into your craving kind of bound to happen. It's just, yeah, what happens afterwards of what you do with it. Try not to make it a really consistent thing. For me, I just can't have that stuff in the house because I will eat it. I have not got the greatest self-control. I was reading a book, Atomic Habits, and it says the people who seem to be more disciplined actually create environments in which they don't need to practice the discipline. So I won't have chocolate in the house. The only reason I ate that block was because it was there. So remove yourself from situations in which you're around and food that you feel like you would binge on or you would go off track with. Understand and appreciate that you cannot always do that. For example, if you're in a workplace and they've always stocked the fridge with donuts, can you tell I like donuts? It's going to be a lot harder. An accountability buddy and making the people around you aware of your goals and that it's really important to you to achieve them is great. It can be annoying when you're like, I'm just gonna go for it, and one's like, should you do that? And you're like, I will kill you. Especially when you're getting really hungry, which is why eating voluminous foods and foods you're enjoying is really important. Do I try to fit sweets in? Well, I kind of covered that in the previous question. I said before, you can fit them into your calories. How does it make you feel though? Like, how does it make you perform in the gym? Does it make you feel sluggish, etc.? If it doesn't, then like, why not have, a minimal amount daily? You could have 2 squares of chocolate every night if that's your thing. But for me, I find I get the best results when I'm eating 100% whole foods. That is what I'm doing. If you want to fit sweets into your diet, you feel like that's going to stop you from having binging episodes, then sure, definitely fit that in. There's no kind of right or wrong way to do this, only the way that is going to get you to your goal whenever you want to be achieving that by. Question is meal timing and intermittent fasting. I'm kind of gonna lump those in together. Meal timing in terms of like, do you eat carbs around when you train, or are there specific times during the day that I try to eat consistently? I do try to time my meals consistently just because I find if we're consistent with when we eat, your body kind of knows when to be hungry and when not to be hungry, if that makes sense. So I find if I have that structure, I stick to my plan better. I've actually previously been someone that eats 6 meals a day, 5 or 6 meals a day. I'm now eating 3 meals a day on this cut just because I find when I'm eating more food less frequently, I just feel more satiated and less fixated and thinking about when my next meal is. Something that I also really like doing when I'm cutting is fasting, not intermittent fasting where there's like the window that you're eating. I just find that if I wake up and eat straight away, it just extends the amount of time you've got to eat and then the breaks in between. So I like to really just push it out. I'll have a coffee in the morning because I find that makes me feel full, and I've got like my greens drink as well, and I drink heaps of water and eat before I train. So I like to kind of eat around 10 and I'll train after that. Fasting like that doesn't improve fat loss or anything like that. Calories overall across the day does. So if you are someone who wakes up starving and you really need to eat, don't feel like because I say I fast in the morning, that's why I'm getting better results. It's not. It just means I'm able to stick to that amount of calories during the day better because I've started eating later. So it's just personal preference. Cravings during your period. Isn't that a fun time? Oh, to be a woman. I find a lot of women experience a lot of different symptoms, I guess, when they have their period. So some people get intense sugar cravings, some people get intense carb cravings, some people don't want to eat, some people don't want to move, which, I can relate to being someone who has experienced endometriosis. When it comes to your period, I am kind of all for adjusting your macros. So say you're doing like a low carb plan because you feel better eating less carbs. Around the time of your period, if you feel like you want more comforting foods, so like potatoes, more rices, so comforting. But even if you wanted to fit in some chocolate, you could increase your carbs and your fats and maybe decrease your protein, so you're having more foods that make you feel good, because when you have your period, life is harder. So if you can alter your food to cater to that, then absolutely do it. As I said, it's the overall calories that impact your ability to lose fat. So if you feel like you need to eat more carbs, then definitely do that, and keep smashing your training. Like, go in there and go as hard as you can. All right, volume for food. Now this is one of the best things that I learned for cutting and for my prep, because there were foods that I was eating say Exo Crunch, that's quite high in carbs, I would have a tiny bowl of like 50 grams, so like not a lot, and then be like, okay, I'm satisfied because that tasted good and it was like a treat, but I'm hungry again already and I don't feel like I ate very much. This is where your food choices become really important in your cut. All right, so I'm just in the kitchen now and I'm going to compare carbs, proteins, and fats.
You shine in the night like a diamond in your eye. I'm good on the side, so just hold me in the dark.
So I'm going to show you guys the carbs first. I've portioned out 100 grams of all of the carbs. So this is 100 grams of cooked brown rice, 100 grams of green bean, 100 grams zucchini, 100 grams of sweet potato, 100 grams of a white potato. Actually done 50 grams of rolled oats, 100 grams of frozen strawberries, 100 grams of pumpkin. So what I want to show you is swapping food choices to eat more volume of food that is the equivalent to the calories and the macros that you need. So if we were to take this bowl of rice, this is 100 grams of cooked rice. That's 172 calories. It's 34.2 grams of carbs, 2.2 grams of fat, and 3.5 grams of protein. If you didn't feel full after eating 100 grams of rice because you're in your cut, you could swap it for, drum roll, 500 grams of pumpkin. This is what 500 grams of pumpkin looks like. There's quite a bit there. There's 129 calories for 500 grams of pumpkin, 34.5 grams of carbs, no fat, and 5.2 grams of protein. Okay, another one I want to compare is this potato. So this is 100 grams of white potato raw, 100 grams of potato, 67 calories, it's 12.9 grams of carb, 0.1 grams of fat, and 2.3 grams of protein. This is not a lot of potato at all. So this is the equivalent in zucchini or courgette, whatever you want to call them. So this 100 grams of potato versus 400 grams of zucchini. 68 calories, so it's 1 calorie extra than the 100 gram of potato. 12.4 grams of carbs, 1.3 grams of fat, and 4.8 grams of protein. So it is slightly higher in protein and fat, but it's way lower in carbs. So you can have all of that, or that, all of that, or that. Like honestly, if you want to eat for volume, so let's compare. Already it's like your lunch or dinner or your meal, whatever, could be these two or these two. So just plug everything into MyFitnessPal. So 400 grams, you can see the calories, how many carbs, fats, and protein it's broken down into. Alright, now we are going to look at protein. So protein will be like your chicken, steak, beef minces, turkey minces, eggs, egg whites, fish, salmon, barramundi, etc. With your protein, most of them are typically a combination of protein, obviously, and some fat. Beef minces and your beef, they'll have some fat content in them. Your eggs definitely have fat content in them, and your chicken. 2 eggs are the equivalent of 180 calories. There'll be 12 grams of fat and 16 grams of protein. So there's quite a lot of fat in 2 eggs. Okay, so you could have 2 eggs, or you could have 150 grams of egg whites, which looks like this. So 2 eggs versus this big old bowl of egg whites, which looks just delicious. Breakdown here is that this would have 16.5 grams of protein, 0 grams of fat, and 1.5 grams of carbs, 72 calories. So if you wanted to get your fats in with this, I would make that and put some nut butter on it and some mixed berries as well. And that's like a meal in itself versus the 2 eggs, which obviously you're gonna feel like you're eating more with that because there's so much of it. So that's a good volume swap for protein with eggs. In terms of your other kind of meat selections for protein, it's really much of a muchness. Like in terms of the protein content, per 100 grams, they're all quite similar. There might just be a discrepancy of like 3 or 5 grams, you know, between like, that's 100 grams of chicken, 100 grams of steak. I wouldn't really focus too much on swapping meats out. It's only when you start looking at the macro content in terms of the fats. So more like your white fishes tend to be the lowest in fat content. Per 100 grams, white barramundi has 2 grams of fat and 24 grams of protein versus say a salmon, which has, if you're getting wild Atlantic salmon, 6.3 grams of fat and 19.8 grams of protein. So higher in fat, a little bit lower in protein. Beef mince has about the same. It's got about 6 grams of fat per 100 grams, but I find you have smaller portions of beef mince versus something like your chicken or your fish. So that's proteins, and now I'm just gonna move on to fats. All right, so when it comes to fats, we've got 10 grams of butter, 20 grams of almonds, 50 grams of avocado, 15 mils of olive oil, and then 10 grams of peanut butter here. Fats per gram have 9 calories, so they are typically higher in calories but use less of them than say your proteins and carbs, so it kind of balances out, but they add up really quickly. So there's 13.7 grams of fat in that, and it's 122 calories for 15 mils. Whereas the avocado, there's 50 grams here, it's 80 calories and 7.3 grams of fat. But it does have 4.3 grams of carbs in it. Nut butter, which is like my favorite, that's only 10 grams. To me, that's a small amount. It has 58 calories and 4.9 grams of fat. I also use a lot of butter, but that tends to be higher in fat too. So you kind of really want, you know, you really kind of want it if you're using it. Per 10 grams, there's 72 calories, 8.1 grams of fat. I got hungry and had to make a snack after looking at all of that. This is one of my favorites. It's egg whites. I've posted about it so many times that people still ask me for the recipe. It's literally egg whites, strawberries or mixed berries and nut butter, topped with cinnamon and salt. Real basic, but it tastes really good. And if you get sweet cravings, I find the combination of the berries, the peanut butter to be on point. So I'm gonna eat that now.
Nothing feels better than this. Say we're just friends, but I swear when nobody's around, keep my eye around your neck, thinking that are you feeling it now? 'Cause I am. I got so high and that's what I got from my feeling found. Oh yeah, back against the wall, this is all we've been talking about. My ears, nothing feels better than this.
Guys, oh my god, almost dropped my tea. All of those things I genuinely do to try and forget about the fact that I'm craving something. As I mentioned earlier, it's usually like you're craving something else, you're craving comfort, you're bored and you're just like, I'm gonna eat because I'm bored. A lot of the time, yeah, you're hungry as well. But you can curb that hunger with like food, as I showed you, that's voluminous, that's gonna make you feel full and satiated. Eat foods that are high volume, stay hydrated, get good sleep. Sleep impacts your hormones, your ghrelin and your leptin, which I'm going to get into in the next episode of the mini cut. Basically my tips for handling and managing your deficit. I really hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you guys enjoyed this, please subscribe. It really means a lot to me if you support me, and give it a like, and comments are so welcome if there's anything you want to see that I'm not doing, or if you have any questions, just put them down below and I'll get back to you. See you guys. Mwah.